Interesting story here. Limited Run Games is producing a actual Super Nintendo cartridge version of Doom, the classic port by Randy Linden that's been enhanced in frankly incredible ways. John, you've had this cart now for a little while. What's going on there? It's pretty impressive stuff, though, right?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Viewers of the channel may recall years ago, Audie and I did an interview with Randy on his work on games like Doom and various other things, and Bleem and all that. Well, apparently that chat sort of like re-inspired him, and that sort of led into this project beginning. It was an opportunity for him to go back and sort of re-tackle this port, because famously, for those unaware, he created this port by sort of reverse engineering Doom back in the day on the Super NES. He had worked with the SuperFX chip, and this is, they actually did work on the SuperFX chip before they had any sort of official development hardware. Like, they had to create their own solution by hacking together like a retail Star Fox cart. So that's how he got learning about the SuperFX chip. And he basically engineered this thing using his very own original engine, and figured out at the time how to extract data from the Doom wads on PC and then insert this into his own engine, and he created Doom. But the problem, of course, even with the SuperFX chip, it was very slow, right? I mean, the Super NES and the FX chip, they're not designed to run a game like Doom. I mean, Alex in his recent video showed that even on like period hardware that was considered relatively powerful, Doom didn't run that well. It was still a very, very demanding game. So the idea that you would actually have Doom running on a Super NES was absurd. But he did it, and the result was mostly like 6 to 10 FPS for the most part in a small window. Well, this new version, he's managed to get it running at a completely stable, from what I've seen, 20 frames per second, which is a significant boost. And that's actually not that far off from some of the PC stuff you were showing, Alex, in terms of
Yeah.
right? But it's actually very consistent. And that actually has more to do with the Super NES's memory situation, where there's not enough memory to display the whole screen in one V blank. So he has to do like 3 V blanks to draw the screen like in vertical strips, which of course then takes, enough time that you're looking at 20 FPS. So that's actually just down to, again, a hardware limitation. It's really not possible to get faster because you can't draw. There's not enough memory to draw the whole screen. That's
Oh
the
my
kind of
Yeah.
situation we're talking about. So this is done. So I sort of, like, full disclosure, I helped a little bit on some stuff with like the videos played in this version, because he actually added video playback to his engine, which is cool. I also did some interviews with him for this, which are going to be posted soon. I think the first one is up, where it's more like just his monologue. I sort of posed questions, and he sort of answered things that came to his head. Because, man, let me tell you, Randy Linden is just like a fountain of information like you wouldn't believe. This is a man who, when it's like, oh, I need to extract this image. Like, oh, I don't want to boot up Photoshop or whatever. That's too much of a pain. Let me just code a tool real quick to get the thing I need. Like, this is the kind of guy Randy is. He's just an absolute genius level programmer. And he's actually still doing this version of Doom very much the way the original worked. So it does indeed include a Raspberry Pi in the chip, but it's only because spinning up an actual brand new ASIC for use in a cartridge would be so prohibitively expensive at this number of copies that there's just no way they could do it, right? But he's using the Pi essentially to simulate the functionality of the SuperFX 3 spec that they designed. So he's reading in and out of this chip exactly the way it originally worked on the Super NES with the SuperFX chip. It's not just like running on a Pi and outputting to the system, which is stuff we've seen before, and the results could be better, but it's also like not that interesting then, because then you're just executing Doom on a different CPU, right? Where here the game is still being executed on the real Super NES, and it's just leveraging the extra functions of this sort of virtual SuperFX chip to run faster. But they also added a bunch of new stuff as well. They added the missing levels and the whole fourth episode, Thy Flesh Consumed. So
Wow.
if you want to play Heck Beneath, you can do it. It's there. And actually, I was surprised. Some of those levels in episode 4 are quite big and complex, right? Because they had leveraged stuff they learned from Doom 2, I think, in making them. And it actually runs perfectly fine. I think it would have been unplayable on the original system. So it's one of those things where, like, you look at this and on the surface, it's like, okay, this is not, like, compared to other ways of playing Doom, this is like not a great way to play Doom, but it's also like an amazing way to play Doom, right? Just because it like sits into this weird, like, technically insane kind of port situation. But even then, though, I would say the original Super NES Doom is basically unplayable today. This is actually extremely playable. Not only because it runs so much faster, but they also fixed the controls as well. Like, they added circle strafing. The original did not support that at all. So,
oh my goodness,
you could strafe, but you couldn't combine moving and strafing. Now you can. Now you can. So,
any of the other sort of limitations of the original version isn't the fact, for example, weren't the sprites more limited?
So that stuff is still somewhat limited, and so things like floor data, sprites, that stuff's limited again by memory on the system and the cartridge stuff, and they can't just like use a it's not so easy to just use a like arbitrarily large cartridge either, due to the way that the SuperFX and everything sort of interfaces together. Apparently, it's like there's still limitations that he had to work within in terms of the overall addressable space here. And of course, the overall memory of the Super NES has not changed. So I personally find these ports so interesting for that reason, because this is not something you can brute force. This is something that really requires thinking and like serious engineering chops. And I think it's super cool that he was able to go back and sort of look at his old code from the 90s and then do that. Oh, and I didn't even mention it. They partnered with who was it? Retrobit, to sort of create a Rumble version of the Super NES controller. Right. And Doom supports the Rumble function, and Randy has released the source code on GitHub for the Rumble function to the public, which means a lot of homebrew developers are currently adding Rumble support to various Super NES games. I believe Star Fox CD will have it, which is something that's being worked on currently, which is cool and fitting, because that was the first game Nintendo did that had Rumble in it. Surface 64, I mean. So bringing it back to Super NES Star Fox is pretty cool. Yeah, there's just so much to explore there. And actually, I would like to do a proper sit down sort of live stream with Randy one of these days here on DF. That way everybody can just sort of pick his brain, because there's so much to talk about with this port, and it's really, really cool. So
yeah, what do you reckon, Alex?
I mean, having recently played games like on a DOS system that was, not powerful enough, this, you have to think about the SNES. It's like, what's the release date? Is it 88 or 89?
It would have been 1990.
90.
But it's got like it's like a 4 point something megahertz CPU in it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the limitations are just right there. Even next to like a 386, they're going to be extremely apparent. And so back in the day, that low resolution.
Oh, it's actually a 3.58 megahertz Ricoh 5A22 CPU.
Yeah, it's the fact that it's running at all, even at the 6 to 8 FPS that it originally got. I'm actually impressed. based on all that. But even now, it's even better. This is a cool thing where I would love to just see it like running side by side with the OG version and the OG SNES version, as well as OG PC, and just see them playing back and forth. I would love to see if Randy could get demos running on it, because he did seem to port at least get a lot of that initial behavior there from the PC version.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, I'll definitely be interested in seeing that live stream, John.
Did you ever play this back in the day on Super NES, by the way, Rich?
No. I was moved on to the Sega side by that point.
Right.
Yeah, but it is remarkable because this was the time of where basically everybody wanted to play Doom and basically couldn't unless you had like a really good PC. And even then, as Alex has demonstrated, it had to be a really good PC.
Really good PC, exactly. And that's the thing, man. And also just like when I think back to the development of the original game, especially, like this comes from a time when like the idea of like community documentation and stuff like this was super early. There was so little information on anything out there. So like everything that he had to do to make this work was just like his own personal ability to sort of like reverse engineer and understand this hardware and create this thing and reverse engineer the game essentially. There was no Doom source code yet when he made this, right? Like they hadn't released that yet because Quake wasn't out, and it had kept up that tradition of releasing source, but it wasn't there yet. So, and it's funny now that how much better this version runs than the Sega Saturn version.
Right.
Now.
Yes, that's true.
But then we've all, Doom always is like this. And there's also one I need to check out as well. There's a 32X enhanced version of Doom out there, complete with like Sega CD support for CD audio. Like gosh, Doom is endless. And I was thinking about this recently when playing through some Doom packs on my new monitor here, as you do. And is it fair for me to say that Doom might actually be the greatest game ever made?
It totally is.
It's an amazing to play, but like it's not
so
just
fun.
the game itself, but everything that it's spawned and how it's continued to stay relevant for so long in a way that I feel like nothing else can match.
Yeah,
I forget what exactly the phrase is from Tim Rogers' video on Doom, but he says like Doom is like the everything game. It's like just like everything. I forget exactly his bottom line was, but it was incredible. I agree with him.
It's a very
Amazing
special
stuff.
game.